We're talking about starting an LLC in 2024. And yes, I have the robot in the screen here because we are going to be using AI throughout this video. But before we get to that, I do want to make mention that there are affiliate links in the description below of this video, and I may earn a commission when you use those links. But later in this video, we're going to talk about a cool charitable opportunity on your end when you use those links as well. So let's jump into the video. What we're going to do is we're going to use this Notion doc that you can see on the screen right now, and I'm casting it to the TV behind me. But here's what we're basically covering in this video. We're going to be talking about the LLC dumpster fire, which of course you want to avoid, why algorithms start this fire, and then we're going to go through a checklist of setting up your LLC in your state, and we're going to have state-by-state resources available to you. We're also going to be talking about using your state website versus online tools versus attorneys, when you should consider using which one of those and how you can go about deciding that for yourself. We're going to be talking about how to maintain your LLC, a 7-point checklist on that, because it's not just about getting your LLC set up today, but it's also making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do for you in the future as well. And then we also have these bonuses. One of the ones I want to talk about very quickly is Ask AI how to form your LLC. So this Notion doc that you're looking at, I've embedded an AI chatbot into it, because the thing that's difficult about this video is you could be in one of 50 states, and the way that you set up your LLC is going to be different depending on the state you're in. Let's say that you're in Texas. How do I set up an LLC in Texas? What this AI chatbot will do is it'll give you a detailed instruction for your state, because there are little nuances that are different for every state, and I wanted you to be aware of that. If you're trying to get to this Notion doc, there is a link in the description below, but there will also be a QR code on screen that you can scan to get there as well. Let's start with the very first thing here, the LLC dumpster fire. Typically, how people end up in this situation is that they don't understand things such as what an LLC actually does. The person with the LLC dumpster fire also is typically unfamiliar with terms such as like piercing the corporate veil, commingling funds, pass-through taxation, or even how to renew their LLC. And they may not be familiar with affiliate marketing as well. What I'm going to do throughout this video is explain these terms, and we're going to do that by giving you a comprehensive view of what you need to do when you're setting up your LLC, but fully understanding what it is your LLC is doing for you. Typically what I find is the algorithms lead you astray, because this first image here, this is a lot of us, we're just very, very busy. So what do is we go to YouTube, we search how to start an LLC, and all the content is like 8 to 10 minutes long. So I applaud you for actually watching this video, taking the time to invest in your education as we move forward throughout this video. And here's what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to educate you properly. I'm going to continually update this document that you can see on the screen right now. And then I want to be as transparent and honest as possible throughout this video. What I find is a lot of these 8 to 10 minute videos are really pushing people to an online LLC service. As you recall, we talked about affiliate marketing briefly. The problem with this is that sometimes using an online LLC tool is not the right way to go for you if there's certain things that affect you for your specific business model, which we're going to be getting to later in this video. But first, let's just go through the basics. Like, how do you actually set up an LLC? So here you can see that there's a checklist of items that you're going to go through, but there's also the bonus and glossary that I wanted to make mention. In the bonuses here, you'll see things such as a free CPA advice, future tax savings, but also this glossary of terms is helpful because there may be things that are popping up throughout the video that you're unsure about. And again, these glossary of terms is just going to get more robust over time. First thing I want to talk about is deciding which route you need to go in. I am going to click the box here, but this is a much longer conversation, which we're going to get into later in this video. But I want to give you a 30,000 foot view of state sites versus LLC services. These are online tools such as like LegalZoom is probably the most recognizable name, but there's Taylor Brands, there's Bizee, formerly called InkFile, Zen Business, Northwest Registered Agent. There's a lot of different services out there, or you can go the route of an attorney. What you need to know in this situation, if you're just, again, thinking of this in 30,000 foot view, is the state website is going to be cheap and it's going to be difficult. Typically, the state websites are harder to navigate. They don't give you a lot of extra services or features that are available to you. And later in this video, we're going to talk about why when your business grows, the state websites can be complicated. But the nice thing is that they're not upselling you into a bunch of different things. The only upsell that they typically offer is expedited processing to move you up on the list as far as getting your LLC set up. Now, when you're using online LLC services, the really nice thing is they're really dialed in terms of tech. They make it easy for you to navigate and they answer a lot of your questions. They also provide many times a lot of free services that get added on, but there are a lot of upsell opportunities, and sometimes you end up getting sold into something that you don't necessarily need, which again, we're going to cover later in the video. Now with a business attorney, they can come in when you have a very specific business model that you may want to talk to an attorney before you go with an online tool or even the state website. And once we go through this initial checklist, we're going to deep dive on all these topics, but I just wanted to give you a 30,000 foot view to at least give you a frame to view things through. First thing you're going to need to do is decide on a business name for your LLC. What I'll say at this stage is that the name itself might not be as important as you're making it out to be. That's because a lot of times you can have a name for your LLC, but then you can have a DBA, doing business as name, or a fictitious name. These are ways of basically saying like the brand name. The LLC name could just be like your name LLC or something like that. You see that a lot, right? It's just somebody's like last name and it's like holdings or whatever. But the actual name that the public will see, you can make that something different in the future. So don't feel like you're like making this huge decision by naming your LLC. You just want to make sure that it's available. So in the next step, that's what we're talking about, is the availability. There's a state directory here. And again, I have to do this because every state has different things, but we're going to use Alabama throughout this video because they're the first state alphabetically. What you can see here is a business entity search by entity name. So what this will allow you to do, and again, you'll find your specific tool in the state right here, is you can just check to see if that name that you come up with is actually available within your state, because it does need to be a unique name within your state for your LLC. Next, you actually want to go and get your LLC set up. The first step with that is registering your LLC name. Now you see I have a comment over here as far as the naming of your LLC. One thing you might want to consider is, if you are struggling with an idea for your LLC name, is you can go to something like ChatGPT, and I'll just copy and paste this in here again. But give me a name for my business that is about, and then insert business type. So why don't we go with an example of a coffee shop, and that helps people feel. And the reason I have that is you want an emotion attached sometimes to whatever the name is that you're trying to come up with. So let's say in this particular coffee shop, it makes people feel unique. Let's see what kind of answers we get here from ChatGPT. And again, this is like in 2024, you don't have to sit here and brainstorm everything on your own. Like you can come up with different things like brewed identity, caffeine character, distinct sips, uniquely Java, persona perk, signature sip cafe. And a lot of times what I like about using these tools is maybe it's not the specific name that you come up with, but it helps to get your brain going in a different direction. So it allows you to brainstorm with somebody else by just using AI tools that are easily accessible going into 2024. Let's say I like this espresso yourself name right here. What we'll actually need to do is register the name. And what you can see is in the next step, we're talking about writing your articles of organization. And there's another state directory here. And this is a different directory. At the top of this, it's going to tell you the different aspects that go into articles of organization, such things as like company name, primary business address, registered agent, duration, purpose, management, tax treatment, authorized signature. I won't bore you with all these details, but what I will say again, you can click on the state here, and what you'll find here is that there's going to be a couple different links. So this one right here, you can see name reservation for domestic entities. Now you'll see domestic and foreign a lot when it comes to LLCs. All that means is the state that you're setting your LLC up in. Let's say again, you're in Alabama, you're setting it up in LLC there. That is a domestic LLC. But if you need to set up a foreign LLC, which we'll get into the weeds of this more later in the video, but like let's say you need to set one up in Georgia, that is going to be your foreign LLC. Now, if you were setting up your home base is in Georgia, that would be the domestic LLC. Hopefully that makes sense. But you can see there's actually a name reservation for this right on this page. So in Alabama, what they do is they call this a name reservation request form for domestic entities. And then if we go back, there's also the domestic LLC formation. And one of the things you'll see here is that number 2, a copy of the name reservation certificate from the Office of Secretary of State must be attached. The way that I like to think about this is you can register for your LLC name and then you file the articles of organization next. It's kind of like registering your domain name and then later you actually have to build the website. That's the best analogy I can come up with for this process. So just know that when you go through the state website, it's kind of a cumbersome process because it feels kind of like you got to go through all this different paperwork. Like there's one form for registering your LLC name, even if you're using their online tool. And then there's this separate filing for the articles of organization, which is basically just giving all the pertinent business data for your business. One of the things that's tough though is it'll just say things like the name of the registered agent, only one agent. And it just says Street, no PO boxes. Address of the registered agent must be located in Alabama. Every state requires you to have a registered agent, and the two rules with it is that they must be in the state and it cannot be a PO box. What that registered agent does for you is they handle important communication and documentation. So this is one of those things that'll like trip you up as you're going through it, and you're just like, I don't know, do I just make it myself or my buddy down the street? I'm not really sure. When you go through an online legal tool, they have services that'll do this for you, and they range in costs. Like I've seen them as low as $119. I've seen it as high as $249. But some of those tools will even provide that registered agent free for the first year. So it's just something to consider. Again, a difference between going through like a state website and going through an online legal tool. Next, you're going to file your articles of organization with the Secretary of State. And you'll notice here it says it requires a fee. So you got to actually fill this document out and then file it. What I will say is I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit on this document, but there's fees associated with starting your LLC. And you'll see a LLC cost calculator embedded in this document right here. So if we select Alabama, you can change this around and the cost will change. But we scroll down a little bit and what you'll see is the state fees. So Alabama has a state filing fee of $200. There is no getting around that filing fee in Alabama of $200. If you go up and we go to Arizona, which will probably bum out people in Alabama, you'll see that their state filing fee is $50. What you'll also find is that some states have an annual fee or biannual fee, meaning every 2 years, where you renew at the state. So again, let's go back to Alabama. You'll see that in their particular case, that annual fee is going to be $50. There's no getting around these fees. It's going to cost you in Alabama $200 to file, and then every year you're going to spend at least $50, depending on how much business income you make, to renew that LLC in the state. But I just wanted to make you aware of that, and we're going to break down that cost calculator later in this video. But when you file with the state, you can do this online through the state website, or you can actually physically mail in those PDFs if you're 100 years old. Now, assigning a registered agent, again, just make sure that it's not a PO box and it is somebody within the state, but we will be talking about how you can potentially get these for free too. Create and sign an LLC operating agreement. Now, is this required? Most states, no, like it's not required, but it's a really good idea. What the operating agreement does is it details who the members of the LLC are, what their roles and responsibilities are, and it can also document things such as like, what if somebody wants to leave the LLC? They want to exit. Well, what is the value of those shares? How do you handle that if a partner wants to exit the LLC? If I was to boil down an operating agreement into one saying, it would be an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And the reason for that is, let's say that you do start up that coffee shop and it ends up doing really well and it franchises out and you have 6 locations and all of a sudden a partner wants to leave. Well, if you haven't already declared how you handle these situations in the operating agreement, it's probably going to be a lot of time with an attorney, which means a ton of money. So sometimes a simple operating agreement could have prevented maybe $10,000, $20,000 of attorney's fees down the line just by having that operating agreement in place. Next, you'll want to set up an EIN. This IRS link here, this will actually show you how to do this for yourself. And one of the cool things is it'll help you determine your eligibility. Do you need to do this and how to submit your application? It is free if you do it yourself through the IRS. My advice here is it's a nice thing to set up right away. It helps legitimize your business. And what that EIN stands for, Employment Identification Number, it's like a social security number for your business with the IRS. And it comes in handy because at some point, if you have anybody on payroll, you're going to need an EIN. It's just a nice thing to have set up day one because it's going to make things like getting a business bank account just that much easier because you will look more legitimate to that bank when you have your EIN set up. All right, this one is a really important concept that we need to talk about, and it's obtaining business licenses and permits for your LLC. I do have an SBA, which is the Small Business Administration document here, and it gets into this a little bit as far as what you may want to consider for your state and different agencies. But what I'll say here is business licenses and permits are different than an LLC. An LLC, limited liability company, is about limiting your liability. These are additional things that maybe your state, your county, or even your town or city require. A good example of this would be like, let's say you're opening up a brewery. Well, of course, you're going to need permits and licenses to be able to serve alcohol. So you're going to need to look at this on the state, county, and town level. Most of the online legal tools will actually offer a service that'll help you search for these things. It is an additional cost, but again, that's the difference between like the state website. They're not going to even really cover this. They're just going to say, hey, you should look into this. When you use an online legal tool, a lot of times they will have services that'll walk you through specifically what you need based on your business category or business type and your location. So again, you want to look at that in the federal, state, and local government levels. So this covers a checklist of setting up your LLC, but the issues that a lot of times people run into is they don't fully comprehend what the LLC actually does for them. So when you go back to the beginning here, we talked about what it does, things like piercing the corporate veil, commingling funds, pass-through taxation. I'd like to cover some of that now in this section down here, which is understanding exactly what your LLC does. If you own a coffee shop and you own it without an LLC, you can see you have this character in the middle here, and everything is connected to that owner, all right? That's because your personal home, personal car, personal bank account are connected to that owner, but so is the business bank account, your point of sale, the actual physical location, the lights, the espresso machine. So many things are all tied to that owner. Now, when you own an LLC that owns the coffee shop, it looks different. So now the individual has their personal assets in the left hand side, and on the right side, you have Acme Coffee LLC. All right, so you have all those things and it's owned by the LLC. And then in the center, what you have here is this red division right here. That division is called the corporate veil. And earlier we talked about piercing the corporate veil. What happens here is if you were sued, let's say the coffee shop, somebody like burned themselves badly on the coffee, the attorney that they may hire is going to try to pierce the corporate veil and get rid of this line so that they can come after your personal and business assets. Now, as long as that LLC is set up correctly, then you're still going to have that division that divides your personal and business assets. That's what that LLC is doing, is it's limiting your liability by creating a division between your personal and business assets. That's why it's so important to have. Now, one of the things that I find with people, though, is they think that there is some sort of tax advantage for setting up your LLC. That's not necessarily true day one, and that is because an LLC is a pass-through taxation entity. And what that means is, let's say the coffee shop, you made $140,000, you grossed $140,000, you had $90,000 of expenses, and then you had a net income of $50,000. That income is going to flow through to you on your personal tax returns. So the IRS is going to tax that $50,000 on the person, not the business. Now, towards the end of this video, we are going to talk about future tax savings considerations when it comes to an LLC, because there are things you can do down the line. But out of the gates, there is no additional tax savings to an LLC compared to, let's say, a sole proprietorship. It's about limiting your liability. That is why you're setting up the LLC. But down the road, there are ways that you can get additional tax savings. So what I want to talk about now is jumping to the next section here on how to set up your LLC, whether you want to go with state online tools or an attorney. Now, we talked about this earlier, and this is the fees associated with setting up your business. I want to take some time to talk about these in a little bit more detail. And in this scenario, what I've done is we've highlighted the top 5 LLC services online. So that is Bizee, formerly known as InkFile. They rebranded towards the end of 2023. Zen Business, LegalZoom, Taylor Brands, and Northwest Registered Agent. What this tool will do is, maybe we'll pick a different state this time. We'll go with Colorado. It'll look at your total 1-year costs and total 5-year costs of using these tools, and it'll explain why there's such a difference when you're comparing these. Now, a quick mention, I do have some asterisks here for Taylor Brands. This is all based on their basic packages for these different tools, and Taylor Brands does not offer annual compliance within any of their basic packages. You have to go to their top tier package, which is a subscription fee. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison when you're looking at cost. The other thing I want to make mention too is sometimes you'll see Northwest Registered Agent, this $100 fee will be discounted, but I wouldn't get caught up in the discounts of that because so many other services just offer a basic package, which is free plus state filing fee. So if you do see content out there where it's like, oh, it's 75% off, it's still $25 more expensive in that base package fee compared to other services out there. One other thing I want to mention quickly is that Zen Business, LegalZoom, and Taylor Brands all have actually lowered their base package fee to match Bizee, who was the first company that was offering $0 plus state filing fee. Here's the state filing fee. We covered this earlier in the video, so I won't spend a ton of time here. In Colorado, it's $50 to get set up, and then it's a $10 annual fee. And then what this does is it adds all that up. So what does this look like after 5 years? Well, it would be $100 for all these different tools as far as the state fees. Now, recurring fees. This one's really important. When you're looking at different tools, the difference in cost that you'll see, and the biggest discrepancy is when you compare Bizee, which is the cheapest, to LegalZoom, which is the most expensive. That comes into play because an annual report filing. So if you want to have Bizee or Zen Business, LegalZoom do this for you, or including Northwest, it'll cost anywhere from $99 to $149. What that is let's say in this example for Colorado, it'll be $10 for Colorado for the annual fee that you have to pay to the state. But then these tools will actually do your annual report filing for you. This is really important that you know this. It's usually Q1 of the calendar year after you get set up. So let's say you get set up in 2024, then 2025 rolls around. It's usually that first 3 months you have to file an annual report with the state. It may be called different things in different states. Sometimes it's called like a privilege tax. Sometimes it's called a franchise tax. It really depends on the state that you're in. But one of the cool things is that you can use these tools to actually help you file these reports. So again, you know that your LLC doesn't have cracks in it, right? The attorney can't pierce the corporate veil. You have to renew your LLC every single year when your LLC is in business. One of the things I want to highlight here too is the registered agent service. So year one with Bizee, they actually offer that for free. These are the other services. You'll see it ranges from $125 to $249. Again, LegalZoom being the most expensive. And then after year one, Bizee is still the cheapest at $119. So that's where you really start to see the difference in fees. LegalZoom, you're already looking at an additional $50 here. And then if my math is correct here, probably $130 a difference just in registered agent going forward every single year as well. Now this last bucket here, these are not actually included in your 5-year cost up here when you're looking at these different tools. But I just wanted to make you aware of things such as like EIN we discussed earlier. You can see it's $70 at Bizee, $125 at Zen Business, $50 at Northwest Registered Agent. But then you also have other things like business contract templates, and all of that is going to be updated within this calculator as well. I believe I mentioned it earlier, but again, you can get this Notion document for free. There's a link in the description below. And the nice thing about that is things will change, like state filing fees change. So that's why we have this calculator, so we can update the calculator so that you know what your fees are. But other things change as well. Like sometimes these companies rebrand, or there's different rules and laws that come into place. So we can always keep adding more resources to this Notion document to keep it up to date for you as you're getting your LLC set up. Now, as far as star ratings from those services, here's what I would say. The state website is great when it comes to cost. So they don't try to upsell you into things, but a lot of the state websites are hard to use. They don't have like great tool tips, or they don't give you good information, or they're just really, really old looking. When it comes to maintenance and services, not as great either. On the services side, it's just because they don't provide you any additional services. They don't tell you like, hey, here's a business bank account you can get set up with, or here's a registered agent, or here, we'll file your EIN for you. They don't do those things. When it comes to maintenance, we're going to be covering that actually right here, why state websites become a pain. Why don't we jump into that right now? In the key above, you can see there's domestic LLC, employee office, and foreign LLC. Now, let's say that you set up a domestic LLC in Texas because that's where you're setting up your LLC, but then business is going well and you start to have employees and offices in other states. What you then need to do in those states is you need foreign LLCs set up as well. Now, the reason that this becomes so cumbersome is now you're going to have a login for the Texas state website. You're also going to then need to create accounts for these other states so that you can have these foreign LLCs. Then every single year when you renew your LLC, you're going to do this in Texas, and you're going to do this in all these foreign LLCs as well. So you can see how just one business can then become cumbersome when you start having foreign LLCs set up. When you use an online legal tool, this can all be managed for you within one state, and you can cleanly be able to see what that process looks like. Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I want you to be aware of these things. So when it comes down the line, you're like, oh, this is why I have a mess. It's because I went through the state website instead of other options out there, because the business is expanding and it becomes a lot on the admin side to manage these things. So online LLC services, you see the cost, we put it at 4 stars. Most of these tools do offer a free plus state fee filing if you go through the basic package. But there are upsells, right? So it may end up costing you more money. So it's not as cheap as using the state website, but it can potentially be as cheap because of the fact that they've become so affordable. Ease of use and maintenance is going to be the best when it comes to these tools. I highly doubt that any state is going to compete with these online legal tools because their job is to be as frictionless as possible and make the experience as great as possible for you. So you want to use that tool over the state website. When it comes to services, I put a 4-star in here, and that's specifically because I wanted to talk about a business attorney. Now, business attorney, cost is going to be 1 star. I mean, you're looking $1,500, $2,000 to get an LLC set up. Ease of use, it kind of depends on the attorney, but typically they're not going to be great with tech and like having dashboards and software that's going to make it easy for you to manage. But maintenance and services. Maintenance 5 stars still, because of course this attorney is going to follow up and want extra fees for renewing your LLCs and handling things such as like domestic and foreign LLCs. Services I put at a 5, and that's because an attorney is going to be able to talk to you about your specific situation and figure out if there's anything that you should be doing differently, because maybe the LLC isn't the right path to go based on your situation. So I think from in terms of services, that's where attorneys win out. Now, here's where you can really get into the weeds here, and those are questions worth asking. The first two here, if you want it fast and low cost, state website or online services are the way to go. But if you want one clean dashboard to manage your LLCs, or do you plan to have more LLCs in the future, then you may want to consider online services. So again, things like Bizee, LegalZoom, Zen Business, etc. If you're an entrepreneurial person, it may be hard to see that today. Like you're just like, oh, I just want to own this coffee shop. But then in the future, you get that entrepreneurial itch again, and then you start owning other businesses. You can see how it would become very cumbersome using state websites to do this, especially when you have to have other state websites involved at times. I threw this in here. It's, do you have low attention to detail? If you do, I wouldn't suggest going the state route. Again, it's because they're not as helpful throughout the process. For a few extra dollars, you can go with an online legal tool, or you can go with a business attorney who's going to help you through all the details. Now, I want to get into more detail when we're talking about attorneys here. Do you have offices out of state? We've covered this. Again, that might be where a domestic and foreign LLC may come into play. Same is true if you have employees in other states. As we move more into remote work, this is more likely a scenario going forward, so something worth considering. Is the LLC for rental properties? It's a really good idea if you have rental properties to put them in an LLC. And again, because it protects you, right? If somebody gets hurt on the property, they're not coming after your personal assets. Where this can get tricky, though, is something called asset protection strategy. Now, let's say Beth has 4 rental properties and each are worth $1 million. She has $4 million of assets. And then Jim has 4 rental properties and each one of them is worth $50,000. He has $200,000 in assets. It's not like you just simply say, like, let's put every property into an LLC. That may not be the best strategy for Jim because he only has $200,000 of assets. But for Beth, she may want to consider something of that nature. And again, there's other things that attorneys may be able to help you out with, which is called the series LLC. Maybe you want to build a portfolio of rental properties and you want to get it to like 30. Well, if you have a series LLC, you can have sub LLCs beneath it, where an attorney would be better suited to answer those questions for you if you're talking about rental properties. This one right here, are you currently making at least $40,000 a year in net profit? Well, you may want to talk to an attorney because you may want to designate your LLC with an S Corp designation. And we're going to get into this later in the video when we talk about future tax savings. But in my opinion, if you're making $40,000 to $50,000 net income today, you may want to talk to an attorney. Now, of course, the goal is to be making that kind of income. I hope you make a lot more than that. You can get set up as an LLC today, and then you can change the designation in the future to help you save on taxes. Last question here, are you starting your LLC with a partner? We talked about this earlier where when you have a partnership, it can create issues down the line. That's where having a rock solid operating agreement could be helpful day one when you go through an attorney. A little bit tougher to do when you're doing it yourself on a state website or going through an online legal tool. All right, now I want to talk about maintaining your LLC. So here we have a 7-point checklist here. And basically it's complete any additional information requirements in your state. Some states, like such as New York State, when you get an LLC set up, they have this antiquated process where you have to actually put it in a publication. So it's like a local newspaper for X amount of weeks. I think New Jersey has some additional registration that you have to do. If you do use this AI chatbot, you can see right here, like New York State, it lays out the publication requirements that are additional maintenance things that you'll need to do within your state. So that chatbot can be helpful, but you also want to just, go through the state website and do some Googling, see if there's anything additional that you need to do when you set up your LLC. Then you want to create an LLC operating agreement, which we've spent time talking about. Set up and keep a registered agent up to date. That registered agent, that is something that you're going to want to continue with that service beyond year one. So you want to continue making sure that you have that. Obtaining your EIN, which we went into. Opening a business bank account. The very beginning here, let's see if we still have this open. We talked about commingling funds. Having a separate business bank account on day one or as early as you possibly can is super helpful. Now, what commingling funds is when you have a personal bank account and a business bank account, and you start running business profits and expenses through the personal bank account. So maybe you set up that coffee shop and you buy your first espresso machine and it goes through your personal bank account. That is called commingling funds. And again, this is really dangerous because it creates a crack in your LLC. So an attorney suing you can say, nope, this isn't a legit LLC. They're commingling funds. So we're going to try to go after your business and personal assets. Another reason you want to get a business bank account set up as early as possible is because it's going to make tax time that much easier. If you can export all of your statements or potentially have it even integrated into a tax accounting software, it makes taxes so much easier because you're not trying to guess if that $100 fee from 6 months ago out of your personal bank account was for business or not. So you want to be able to separate those things as soon as possible. Next, research and obtain necessary permits, licenses, and registrations. A lot of different businesses will require this. You may be opening up a construction firm and there's certain permits and licenses that you need within your county. There's different things that you may want to consider here. And then maintaining your LLC compliance, filing your annual report. We touched upon that as well. My recommendation though for this checklist, and just being a business owner in general, it's this weird like tug and pull, because sometimes it's like you want to save money and you're trying to scrape every nickel together because you're getting started. But on the other side, you want to be able to make decisions quickly and you want to be able to move forward in your business quickly. What I see with a lot of business owners who struggle is they pour over every single detail and they try to do everything themselves, and they're slow to hire and they're slow to spend money and invest in their business. And then they just either burn out or they just never even make a profit because they're taking too long to get up and get running. You're going to eventually make mistakes or make a wrong decision as a business owner, but the secret is not to avoid every single one of these mistakes. It's to be able to get through these mistakes quickly, okay? So what I would recommend is the tool Bizee here. After going through all these different tools, I find them to be the most transparent, but specifically, like let's say you're forming your LLC, and again, we'll stick with Alabama because we've been talking about that. They do have the free package here, $0 plus state fee. But when you go into their mid-tier package, Gold, it's an additional $199. But what you'll see here is that they will prepare and file the articles of organization, which you now fully understand. The unlimited name searches, not a big deal. You can just go through the state website. But they have the free registered agent service for a year. They do your EIN business tax number. They have an operating agreement, but they also do banking resolution and business banking account setup for you as soon as possible. So this is where you can see that 2 through 7 are going to be covered through this service. When you actually get set up with the service, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to ask you what your business category is. Towards the end of this video, I will go into more detail on Bizee to show you what the actual back-end dashboard looks like. My goal with this video is not just to push you into Bizee, because there may be instances that a different route is the best path for you. But I do believe for 90% of people setting up their LLCs, it is the best option for everything that I've mentioned up to this point in the video. As mentioned in the very beginning, I would make a commission when you use my link, but I want to be able to talk about something really quick that's important to me, and that's a free charity opportunity. There's a charity that I'm involved with called Crisis Services, and what they do is it's a local hotline and also a chat line that people can go to when they're feeling in a moment of crisis. So it could be anything from domestic abuse to suicidal thoughts, things like that, that I know is a little heavy to talk about, but it's important to me that you know that if you do use my link, there'll be $20 donated to that charity on your behalf. And again, you can do that in the description below, or there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan as well with your mobile phone. All right, a few other things that I want to talk about here is free CPA advice. This may be something that before you even go to an attorney, you may want to talk to a CPA who can advise you on stuff such as business tax setup. And what I found that's really helpful here is QuickBooks. They have a pro advisor program. So I'm going to put in the zip code of my beloved Buffalo Bills. And what you can do is I want you to go to select services here, and you can set up things like tax setup and small business tax, and then search. And you can make the distance longer if you need to, but what you'll find right away is here's somebody who offers a free consultation, free consultation, free consultation, free consultation, etc. CPA is the better designation than an EA. It takes more education to get your CPA designation, so you may want to look at that. But the nice thing is if you're looking for things such as like business permits, right? And you're not sure what you need locally, this would be a great option for you because you can find somebody local in your area who can help you with business tax setup. And then they may be able to advise you based on your situation that you may want to talk to an attorney. You may not be able to afford a CPA day one. My advice is the earlier you get a CPA involved, the better it is for your business, because there's so many things on the state level and federal level that they can help you navigate. And of course, they can help you file your taxes as well. Now, in the mid-tier package though of Bizee, they also provide a business tax consultation for free as well. So that is an added bonus for you when you're on that gold package with Bizee. Earlier in the video, we talked about future tax savings. And basically what that is setting up an LLC with an S-Corp designation. This comes into play when you're around $40,000 to $50,000 of net income. And I wanted to share this resource with you on Bizee here, which is an S-Corp tax calculator. As you scroll down, this graphic right here does a great job of comparing the difference between an LLC and an S-Corporation. When you have an LLC, as we mentioned, it's a pass-through taxation. You will pay employment tax on this as normal. Employment taxes are things such as like FICA, unemployment insurance. So you will pay all of your taxes on the LLC side, but when you're an S-Corp, the salary parts, right? When you set up an S Corp, you have to put yourself on salary and pay yourself a reasonable wage, and you will pay full taxes on that salaried income. But anything that's a distribution, which is also sometimes called a dividend, you will only pay federal income tax on this. So you get around the self-employment taxes on the distributions. Self-employment taxes, as of making this video, are 15.3%. What you can do with this calculator is you can just kind of play with scenarios. You're like, well, let's say that we made $79,500, and then you pay yourself a salary, a reasonable wage of $42,500. As a sole proprietor, you would be paying $12,164 in taxes. But as a sole proprietor, somebody who's paying themselves a salary and a dividend, you would pay $6,503 in taxes, and you would save roughly $5,661. So that is why you'd want to have an LLC with an S Corp designation. You may have been wondering earlier what this IRS Form 2553 is. What that form is that you file this with the IRS, and it allows your LLC to have an S Corp designation. And again, that is because you can save on taxes on the distributions, but you have to be on payroll and you have to pay yourself a reasonable wage. You can't just give yourself a salary of like $6 and take everything as a dividend. And again, those are things that you can talk to with an attorney to be like, well, based on my situation, what's a reasonable wage that I should be paying myself? They can help you with that. What I've also found for my particular situation is Gusto works pretty well for small teams under 10 as far as setting up a payroll solution, and I'll have a link for that in the description below. The nice thing about that link too is you'll get anywhere from like $100 to $200 Visa debit card when you use a referral link as opposed to going directly through the service. I want to just cover a couple things in the glossary of terms. There's a good video in here. It's talking about a scam that you see with LLCs a lot of times. This happens after you get set up. You'll start getting mailers that are like, you got to spend $150 for the certificate that you need to get through the state. These are scams. That video is definitely worth a watch. But even more so than that, what you can see on the screen here is an in-depth review of Bizee. And again, I'm going to take you into the back-end dashboard. What does it look like post-purchase? So you can see what it's like to manage an LLC using Bizee. Thank you for using my affiliate links and supporting the channel and my local community. All right, I'll catch you in the next video.